All right, let's get right into this. Welcome to our latest explainer, where we're going to investigate one of the most famous and honestly probably the most misunderstood institution of the ancient world. Yep, we're talking about the Great Library of Alexandria. Look, we've all heard the stories, right? We've all pictured those massive grand columns and that incredibly tragic end. But today, we're going to strip away centuries of rumor and look strictly at what the historical evidence actually tells us. We're going to uncover the real fascinating truth about humanity's very first attempt to gather literally all the knowledge in the world.
So, here's the big question. Did a single fire really destroy the ancient world's knowledge? It's this massive global pop culture myth, right? The idea that humanity was abruptly plunged into a dark age by one catastrophic inferno that just wiped out the library in a single night. We see this super dramatic image everywhere, movies, books, everywhere. But as we're going to see today through the actual historical sources, the reality is way more complex, a lot less cinematic, and in so many ways, a much more important cautionary tale for us today.
Section 1. Myths and Realities.
Okay, so depending on who you talk to, the blame for the library's destruction is generally pinned on one of three specific events. First, there's Julius Caesar accidentally setting a fire during his siege in 48 BCE. Then you have Christian zealots destroying the Serapeum Temple in 391 CE. And finally, the story of Muslim Arab conquerors intentionally burning the scrolls in 641 CE. I want you to just kind of file these three dates and events in the back of your mind for now. We are going to completely unpack and actually debunk these myths a bit later on, basing it purely on what the historical timeline shows us.
Section 2. The World's Memory Bank.
Let's go back to the beginning. It all starts in 331 BCE, when Alexander the Great founds the city of Alexandria in Egypt. It was a brilliant, strategic Greek trade hub, connecting the Mediterranean to the east. But when Alexander dies, his empire basically splinters. His general, Ptolemy I's suitor, takes control of Egypt in 323 BCE. Now, Ptolemy didn't just want military might, he wanted absolute intellectual dominance. He envisioned this grand cultural center, merging Greek and Egyptian influences. And then his successor, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, actually finishes the construction around 285 BCE. Thanks to all that wealth from the Fertile Nile and a total monopoly on papyrus, these Hellenistic kings had the deep pockets to turn this wild vision into a reality.
And that vision came to life in the Mausoleum, which, you guessed it, is the origin of our modern word museum. But listen, it was so much more than what we think of today. It was literally a temple to the muses, the goddesses of the arts and sciences. In practice, though, it functioned way more like a massive, cutting-edge research university campus. It wasn't just some dusty, quiet building for storing scrolls. The historical sources describe this vibrant, buzzing complex with living quarters, communal dining halls, classrooms, laboratories, observatories, and even botanical gardens and zoos. It was basically the ultimate ancient think tank.
But the truly crucial point here is the sheer mind-boggling scale of their ambition. 500,000. That is the widely cited number of scrolls held in the main royal library. Just let that sink in for a second. We are talking about 500,000 scrolls, with another 42,000 kept in a secondary public library over at a religious temple. To put this into perspective, their goal was completely unprecedented. They wanted to collect and catalog literally every single piece of knowledge ever written by humanity, all in one place.
Section 3. Ruthless book collecting strategies.
So how do you get 500,000 scrolls? Well, the Ptolemies used what was known as the from the ships policy. Honestly, it was essentially state-sponsored book piracy. Any ship docking in Alexandria's super busy harbors was routinely searched by the authorities. If you had any texts on board, they were instantly confiscated and rushed straight to the library scribes. These scribes would painstakingly copy the texts. But here's the catch. The library kept your original authentic manuscript and handed you back the freshly made copy. They were absolutely ruthless and obsessed with getting original works, mainly because older copies just had fewer transcription errors.
To show you just how far they'd go, think about this number, 15 talents. In today's money, we're talking roughly $15 million, maybe more. The library desperately wanted the original masterworks of the great Greek playwrights, Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles. So, King Ptolemy III sends envoys to Athens and pays this staggering 15-talent fortune as collateral, just to, borrow the scrolls for copying. But once those scrolls arrived safely in Alexandria, Ptolemy III simply decided to forfeit the massive fortune, keep the priceless originals for his library, and send the Athenians back brand new copies. Just an incredible flex.
And they certainly weren't above economic warfare either. As Alexandria kept growing, a rival library popped up in Pergamum, in modern-day Turkey. To crush the competition, King Ptolemy V issued a strict embargo, totally banning the export of Egyptian papyrus to Pergamum. He wanted to cut off the literal material they needed to write and copy books. But ironically, this ruthless move backfired beautifully. Forced to find an alternative, the scribes of Pergamum innovated. They began treating animal skins for writing. They actually invented what we now call parchment, derived from the Latin word pergamina, which literally translates to paper of Pergamum.
Section 4. The Golden Age and Scholars. So how exactly did they attract the smartest people in the world? Well, the Ptolemaic kings offered an absolutely irresistible package. If you were a top-tier scholar, you got complete tax exemption. You were given free lodging right there in the lavish royal quarter. You got free communal meals. And most importantly, you received a handsome salary and extremely lucrative research funding. This totally freed you from the daily grind, so you could dedicate your entire life to thinking, writing, and teaching. Unsurprisingly, Alexandria became a total magnet for the greatest minds of the era. But look, with 500,000 scrolls, you run into a massive, very practical problem. How do you actually find anything? Enter a guy named Callimachus and the Pinnacase. This is genuinely one of the most vital innovations in the history of information. The Pinnacase was essentially a 120-scroll bibliographic survey. It categorized texts alphabetically and by subject, so poetry, mathematics, medicine, the whole shebang. It wasn't just a basic list, it was the ancient world's very first card catalog. It was a literal search engine that organized this terrifying, overwhelming sea of knowledge into an actual, usable database. Because of that incredible organization and bottomless funding, some absolute heavyweights walked the halls of the Mausoleum. You had Eratosthenes, a chief librarian who accurately calculated the circumference of the Earth. You had Euclid, who literally formalized the very foundations of geometry, stuff we still teach in schools today. And of course, Archimedes, the genius engineer and inventor who studied there. The output from this single institution absolutely, fundamentally shaped human civilization. Section 5. True decline. Neglect, not fire. Now here's where we get to the real historical timeline, and it proves the decline was a centuries-long decay, definitely not a sudden dramatic flash. In 145 BCE, Ptolemy VIII gets into a bitter power struggle and expels the leading foreign scholars, including the chief librarian. That's when the intellectual brain drain really begins. Then we get to Julius Caesar in 48 BCE. Yes, he set fire to ships in the harbor, and yeah, the fire spread to the docks, maybe destroying some warehouses holding books. But we know for an absolute fact the library itself survived and kept operating, because scholars visited and referenced it for centuries afterward. Heck, Mark Antony even gifted 200,000 scrolls to Cleopatra to replenish it. The real physical damage came much later, through Roman warfare. Emperor Aurelian damaged the royal quarter during a siege in 272 CE, and Emperor Diocletian completely razed the area in 297 CE. By that point, the grand institution was largely already just a memory. And honestly, understanding this slow decay completely debunks the other great myth. That famous story that Arab conquerors under Caliph Omar burned the library in 641 CE? It's entirely fictional. Historical sources clearly show this tale was invented by a 13th century writer named Gregory Bar Hebraeus, that is more than 600 years after the supposed event. Scholars have widely and pretty firmly rejected this as complete fabrication since the 18th century. By the time the Arabs arrived in the 7th century, there's literally no evidence the Great Library even existed anymore. As the World History Encyclopedia perfectly summarizes it, the most likely explanation for the library's fall is a loss of patronage. It wasn't one dramatic movie villain with a torch. It perished because it lost its political funding, its societal support, and its brilliant scholars over hundreds of years. The bureaucratic neglect, the political infighting, and shifting socio-religious priorities just slowly choked the life out of it. The scholars simply packed up their standardized, copied texts and moved to other centers of learning. It was just a slow fade.
Section 6. Rebirth of the library.
But thousands of years later, humanity actually decided to resurrect the ideal. In 1990, an international commission, with the backing of UNESCO, signed the Aswan Declaration to revive the ancient library. After years of incredible global collaboration and construction, the massive Bibliotheca Alexandrina officially opened to the public in October 2002.
situated right near the ancient site. It's this magnificent modern facility that holds physical books, sure, but also massive digital collections and internet archives. It's basically picking right up exactly where Callimachus and the Ptolemies left off. Which really brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. We've seen that the greatest library in history wasn't actually destroyed by a spectacular, sudden fire. It was slowly, quietly lost to changing political winds, defunding, and bureaucratic neglect. So I'm going to leave you with this question. How are we protecting our own universal knowledge today? In an era of purely digital data, massive server farms, and constantly shifting institutional funding, are we making the exact same slow mistakes? It's a fascinating history for sure, but maybe a really powerful lesson for our modern world too. Thanks for exploring the real story of the Library of Alexandria with me.